Hi and welcome or welcome back. In today's tutorial, we'll be creating this set of bottles with different colored liquids. We'll start by creating a gold bottle, and then we will use the hue, saturation, and brightness tools to create the other colors. So for setup, I have a 5-inch by 7-inch canvas. And there is not a new color palette for this project. I am using some colors from the Puffin palette, which is free to download on my website, but I'll mainly be selecting colors directly from the wheel. And you definitely do not need to download the palette for this. I will be sharing the colors that I'm choosing as I go, and you also do not need to match mine exactly, but I will link the palette in case you would like it. All of the brushes are default PROCREATE brushes, and I'll have the list of those with their folders in the description box. And as always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer quickly. If you create art with this tutorial, I would love to see it, and you can share it with me on Instagram at ZeraCatStudio. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a drawing guide. I've tapped the wrench icon in the top left corner. Then under the Canvas tab, I am turning on the drawing guide. And then under Edit Drawing Guide, I'm going to Symmetry. And under Options, I am making sure that it is set to vertical. And then I'm tapping Done. And I'm going into that Layers menu and making sure my first layer does have Drawing Assist on. If not, I'm just double tapping it and choosing Drawing Assist from the menu that pops up. And then I have my 6B pencil to sketch, but you can really use any of the pencil brushes or any brush that you prefer to sketch. So about a third of the way down the page, I'm starting off by sketching a rectangle, and the Drawing Assist will make sure that everything is nice and parallel and even for me. And then I'm drawing the little dropper part of the handle right above that. Right where the rectangle ends, I'm starting off with the top of the jar, it'll be thinner towards the top, and then I'm bringing that out a little bit, but not too far, drawing a straight line down the left side, holding my pencil down at the end, and then pressing with a finger to make it straight. And then I'm just closing out the bottom of the bottle, going back to my Layers menu, tapping the end of that layer to reduce the opacity, and scrolling the blend mode up to multiply. Then I'm creating a new layer and bringing it underneath my sketch. Double tap on that layer and turn on Drawing Assist, and then I'm using a very light blue color and my Studio pen, which can be found under the Inking tab of the brush menu, and I'm using that to create the shape of the bottle. So I am just following the lines I've already created, and because of Drawing Assist, we only have to go down one side. And if you want, like we did before, you can hold your pencil down at the end of your line to snap it straight. And then I'm just making sure that I fully close in the shape before I drag in my color to fill it in. I'm turning off my sketch so I can see better, and setting my eraser to the Studio pen. And then I'm just using that to clean up the top and the edges of my shape. Creating a new layer and turning my sketch back on. And then I'm turning Drawing Assist on this layer and using a darker blue color to color in or to trace along the lines of the top. And I'm starting off with just the rectangle, and then I will create a separate layer for the dropper. So again, I am holding my pencil down at the end of these lines to make them straight, but don't worry too much about it being perfect, because later we will go back in with our Studio pen eraser and use that to clean up any bumpy or imperfect edges. Okay, so I'm creating a new layer, bringing it underneath that rectangle, turning Drawing Assist on, and then using that to create the top of the dropper. Okay, going back to my Layers menu, and with our bottle layer that we've drawn, I am reducing the opacity of that. This is going to allow me to see better what we are creating next, which is like the straw part. So I'm turning Drawing Assist back on, and I'm using that same light blue color that we used before for our bottle. And then I'm using the Studio pen and going straight down, holding my pencil down to snap that line into place, pressing a finger down to make it straight, and creating a little point on the end and closing the shape at the top, and then filling it in. Then I'm using my eraser set as the soft brush, which can be found under the airbrush tab of the brush menu. And then I'm just using that to gently erase the center of that straw. And then I'm increasing the size and very lightly going over the full straw. And don't go too crazy making this perfect or even worrying about it, because a lot of it is about to get covered up with our liquid. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the sketch off. Going back to that bottle layer, I am swiping left on it and choosing duplicate. And then the one that is on the bottom, I'm turning off Drawing Assist, putting the opacity back up to 100%, choosing a golden yellow color and filling it in. Then with my eraser set as the Studio pen, I am drawing a curved line over the top and then just erasing that extra so that we can see a little bit into the bottle. Going back to my layers menu, I'm using 2 fingers to swipe right on that golden layer, or you can just double tap the layer and choose Alpha Lock. This will make sure that we're only drawing inside that shape. And now I'm going to my flat brush, which is under the painting tab, and I'm choosing a slightly darker and slightly more orange toned shade and working my way from the outside in. Now I'm just temporarily turning off that blue glass layer. It was covering up what I was trying to work on here and making it harder to see the colors. So I'm continuing to shade, and then I will darken the color again and make it a little more red toned, and go again just even more on the edges. Okay, so now I'm going to add some highlights, and I'm turning the color back towards yellow, going to a lighter shade, and starting to add some brightness towards the middle and then also right across the very top. And then I'll go back to the wheel, choose a brighter shade, and go in again and add some more. I am not worrying about making it perfect, and remember, we're going to be adding a label and the rest of the glass jar all on top of this, so some of it's going to get covered up anyway. Okay, to add some more shadow, I'm going way back towards the red, using like a bright orange here, and adding just some shading right along the very edge. And then I'm selecting white and adding just a touch more highlight. Creating a new layer above the gold, tap on that layer again, choose Clipping Mask, and from the brush menu, selecting the Glimmer brush, it is in the Luminance tab. Then I'm using a bright yellow color and starting to add some sparkle, some more shimmer. Alright, going back to my layers menu, turning that blue glass layer back on, double tapping that layer, turning Drawing Assist off, and using my soft brush as the eraser. You can find it under the airbrush. I am erasing gently using the side of my pencil, erasing out from the center. I have another video that tells a little more in depth on how I create a glass jar, but this is kind of a quick version of that. So now I'm swiping right with 2 fingers on that layer, and I am selecting a medium blue shade, going back to my flat brush and using that to shade around the entire outside edge of the jar. And I do have the opacity of the brush just slightly lowered. You can adjust that using the slider over here on the left. Okay, and now I am going to select a brighter blue and go around again doing the same thing. Okay, so to create some space in between the liquid and the bottle, I'm first going to combine the golden layer with the clipping mask that we created above it. So I'm just going to pinch those two together. And then I am tapping the arrow to select the whole layer and using the uniform setting, decreasing the size. And if you need to move it down, you can just tap, tap, tap below the layer and it will move it down for you. Then I am creating a new layer and selecting white, using the flat brush and creating a highlight down the left side of the jar, using the soft brush to gently erase the edges using the side of my pencil, and then creating two sharper erased parallel lines right at the top of it. And then I'm selecting that whole layer and using the arrow to rotate it slightly. It was a little bit crooked. And then I'm keeping white, but using my studio pen to create a couple more highlights. And each time I am grabbing the eraser with my soft brush and just gently erasing the edges so they blend in. And then doing the same thing along the bottom and the top of the jar. Okay, so I'm going to get ready to shade the top. First, I'm double tapping on both of those layers and turning off Drawing Assist. And then I have the studio pen with my eraser, and I'm going along the bottom edge, selecting both of the top layers and moving it down if needed, and then doing the same thing for the top edge and selecting just the top section and moving it down to connect it. So I'm just making those lines a little straighter. I feel like you can barely even tell, but it's noticeable to me at the time. Okay. Selecting a very dark blue, almost black, with the soft brush and using the side of my pencil, I am adding some shading to the outside edges and the very top of this rectangle shape. Then I'm choosing a bright light blue, kind of like the one that we used to create the glass, and adding a highlight. And then we are basically going to just repeat this process for the other section of the top. So adding the dark blue shadows on the edge and the bottom, and then adding some bright blue highlight to the center, or slightly off center. Okay, now to create a label, I'm creating a new layer, going back to my flat brush at full opacity, and just drawing one straight line using that same dark blue shade that I used for the shadows on the top. Choosing my arrow to adjust the size and place it exactly where I want on the jar. And you could use the studio pen like we did before to clean the edges up of this label and make it really sharp, but I kind of like how it looks with the flat brush, sort of like it reminds me of how tape might look. And now I'm creating one more layer, going back to my studio pen and using the same gold that we used for the inside of the jar. And I'm just going to write on my label. Now we are going to use this illustration to create a set of 6 bottles with different colors inside. So I'm swiping right on all of these layers that we've just made, tapping group so they group together, closing that group, and then swiping left on the group, duplicating the whole thing. And then I'm turning off the first group. And in the new group that we've created, I am going to take off the label, combine the top layers down, combine the glass layers down, So we're just left with the top, the glass, and then the liquid and the straw. Then I am tapping the arrow tool to select that entire group, and I'm going to move it up into the top corner of my page, duplicate that group again by swiping left on the whole group, tapping duplicate, and repeating this process until I have the number of jars that I want. So I'm going to do 6. And if it gets to the point where you didn't leave yourself enough space like I did, you can just swipe right on all of the groups, select them with the arrow, and move them all up at the same time. I also have turned on snapping and magnetics down there at the bottom, and that is helping me keep everything in line. You definitely don't have to, but it is helpful. Going back to that first group and choosing the layer of gold liquid, tapping the magic wand up in the top left, and hue, saturation, brightness, making sure that it is under the layer setting. And down here at the bottom, this is how we can adjust the color without having to reshade everything by hand. So first, I would recommend just, if you have never used this before, testing out how these tools work by just playing with them a little bit. And if you want to set it back to the way it was, the original color settings that you had, you can put all of the sliders back to 50%. That is where they all started off. So I'm going to set everything back to 50% and mainly focus on using the hue slider to adjust the colors, and then only touching the saturation and brightness if I need to. So I'm doing like a rainbow series up here. So I'm starting with a pink shade, and once I have the color I like, I will go to the second bottle, select just the liquid layer, and repeat the process, tapping the magic wand, hue, saturation, brightness, and sliding the slider where I would like it to be. Now, the green is the one that I do like to mess with the saturation and brightness a little, because sometimes it comes off a little, it was not quite the shade I was looking for. So that one I just toned down the saturation a little bit and increased or decreased the brightness a little bit, and I liked how that looked a lot better. But I think for the other ones, I just mainly adjust the hue. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.